I
Yeah.
talked about it with Rich Homie Quan in September. Now we got to talk about it with Liam Payne. The Direction star Liam Payne fractured his skull and died instantly of very serious injuries. He suddenly plunged from his third floor hotel balcony in Argentina. First responders had rushed the hotel after receiving an emergency call from a frantic manager late Wednesday. His manager claimed that Payne was destroying his hotel room and was under the influence of drugs and alcohol.
Mm.
Liam dropped a video about his sobriety and how he
Mm.
was in a good place. He wasn't touching that stuff anymore. It sounds to me, and you
Mm.
can probably speak to this better than me, but it sounds like he relapsed.
Yeah.
And
Hard.
unfortunately, this relapse was fatal, bro. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he relapsed hard. He relapsed hard. Especially, I think about that verse all the time about when you clear out the demons, and if you don't fill anything in,
Mm,
the demons come back 7 times, right? But I think from a psych addiction, first of all, addiction, one of those things that is both, it's kind of like a trifecta. It's both spiritual, it's both psychological and physical, right? In the body. Like literally, once you put yourself in a place where your body's addicted, your brain has been rewired with the addiction as part of the hardwiring of the brain. Meaning, to put it a little more simple, when you wake up, your brain is looking for the addiction to function.
mm,
You go to sleep, your brain is looking for the addiction to decompress. The same way your brain looks for food to eat so that you can have energy, now your brain's looking for drugs to ingest, have energy, right? So the drug becomes part of your brain system. When you relapse, for him, when I hear relapse, what I also hear is, and during his sobriety season, what had he replaced with the drugs? Because if it was nothing, when he relapsed, he probably binged relapse, meaning he took an influx all at once. And probably also because typically when that happens too, the person who's relapsing forgets that what they're about to ingest, though that's what they probably ingested when they were on drugs, at their height of being on the drug, their body can't handle that same amount in that moment on its own because it's lost tolerance. And so I wouldn't be surprised, man, if he was gone mentally.
mm.
I'm sure, like if his life had been spared, he probably wouldn't have been able to remember much of what he had done.
Something like
So it's just really sad.
I know I wanted to ask something like this can happen suddenly. You're having a great time, everything is good, and then you just have a bad day. It's never builds up, is it? You can correct me.
So no, I would say majority time
Mm,
you're looking at a build up for sure.
okay.
Especially when it's been long term,
Hmm.
you're looking at a build up because, like, yeah, if you're sober for a while, you have a bad day and that thought comes to your head and you're not strong willed that day, you can go. But if you've been keep the reason why I say it's build up though is
Mm,
typically with sobriety, they're like walls, there are different walls that come down that lead you to relapse, right? Sometimes it's the wall of desire, right? So you feel an urge, right, or a craving that starts a month before, but you still got your systems of accountability, your systems of coping skills,
mm,
your spiritual life systems, right? Like you got all the systems in place. So though there's the urge, those other walls have been knocked down yet, so you're good. Or it's the flip where you're not having any urges, but you start to knock down those systems because you don't think you need it anymore. So you knock down accountability. You're not going to meetings, or you knock down being transparent and vulnerable with people, or not going to certain places and not being around certain places.
mm,
You knock down not being around gateway drugs. For somebody who's under hard
mhm.
drugs, their gateway may be alcohol,
Right.
but they get to a place where they feel like they're good, and so they'll start just going to the bar, and they seem good, right? But they're slowly begin to knock down that boundary because now they're drinking, and before you know it, they end up getting there.
See.
So it's usually a buildup,
Mm,
but it's usually a buildup that no one really sees,
right.
you know?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, no, it's tough, man. Obviously, we were seeing the reactions. Talked about how all the fans gathered around the hotel. People know this, but maybe some people don't realize this is that One Direction was our generation's impact on our generation was bigger than probably what Backstreet and NSYNC did in the 90s.
my
They were
goodness.
huge. I mean, we're talking about
Yeah.
international stars here. And even when they ended their group and they started branching off, those guys did well to get solo acts. See,
Mm.
Harry Styles is doing a great job. I mean, Liam was a star in his own right. We can see it's just tough seeing his life end this way. I just wish there was just another way that this could have happened. I wish the backsliding. Well, I don't know how you want to call it, but
Yeah.
whatever this situation, whatever this episode was, I just wish it wasn't fatal. And
Yeah.
that's probably the worst part about all this.
And bro, I'm glad you said that because I think too, man. Like, I think it's humbling because you realize like it takes one thing sometimes, one moment. Let me say that it's a buildup because because you're also thinking of this idea of like, man, like I mean, just to be real, right? Did this person die without the Lord, right? Ever, right? Like, and I'm not talking about he sinned and if he's not saved, but I'm just saying like, did he know the Lord at any point in his life? So you have that perspective, but you also realize like from a practical perspective, you realize that man, it only takes one moment for all of us, right? Like for me, it takes one moment to get into a situation where you cheated on your wife, right?
Yeah.
It takes one moment where you just decide one day you're gonna hit weed and now you know what I'm saying? And so it is very tragic when you think about someone like him, One Direction, people like icons that you often see come up and then there's just this internal demon going on within them, right? And I mean that, figurative and literal, it's just really sad. Sometimes you wonder what their soul care is like when they're at the height of their fame and at the low of their fame. Like what's their, when I say soul care, I don't just mean spiritual, but like their mind, their emotions. Because there's a psychologist by the name of Dr. Uman. He has done like I think work with Justin Bieber, with Carl Lentz, the Hillsong pastor.
Yes, sir.
And he said that he made a statement once on a podcast. He said that we should pray the prayer that God, don't make me famous before my prefrontal cortex develops. And let me just geek out for a second.
Yeah.
Prefrontal cortex is the executive functioning, right, of the brain, right? This is where your self-control, good decision making come from, stuff like that. But he essentially was saying that like a lot of times young celebrities, they often get famous before, because the prefrontal cortex develops when you're 25.
25. Yep. Yeah. And I got something else I
And
want
so,
to ask you after all this.
really
Yeah.
cool, I got you.
Mhm.
And so for a lot of young celebrities, young actors, they're getting a hold of fame, money, I mean, glory, right? Sex before even this is fully developed. So like their self-control meter is like it's just not,
Mm.
and that's not an excuse per se, but it's an explanation, right? Like that, you wonder on these people sometimes who is there really taking care of their soul, like helping them with soul care, like making sure they're good, because you use them for the talent, and then
Yeah.
they're gone. So yeah, man,
Yeah.
yeah, just sad overall, just
Yeah,
sad
it's
overall.
sad overall, man. Obviously, we pray for the family. We pray for everybody that's affected in this
Yeah,
situation.
for sure.
We pray for God's healing for him.
Yeah,
He left behind a son, and the son is not going to get to know.
wow,
Yeah, I think his son was 7. His name was Bear, I believe. And he's not.
wow,
Yeah, he's not going to have a chance to with daddy after this. So we pray for him. We pray for everyone else,
wow.
man. Bless.